Today we will talk about integrating tidal energy generation into an island energy system, and we will take Orkney Islands as a case study. Energy access is absolutely essential for any community to grow and to have a sustainable economy, no matter if it's a large developed community or a small remote island. In fact, it's not just the energy availability, it's also the cost of energy that is crucial for any sustainable economic growth to happen. Orkney wasn't much different from any other island. It used to rely heavily on imported fossil fuel as a main source of energy. However, over the past 2 decades, Orkney has been seeing a great shift in energy towards renewable sources. Since 2013, Orkney has become a net exporter of electricity, with over 50 megawatt of installed wind capacity. But as we all know, wind is known for its seasonality and its intermittent nature. That means it will not be possible to meet the island instantaneous energy demand from wind generation only, unless we use a very expensive and high-capacity storage system. The current renewable energy generation pattern in Orkney, which is dominated largely by wind, as we can see from the figure on the left, is incapable of achieving energy independence. Electricity imports will be needed to meet the electricity demand when the wind is not blowing enough. On the other hand, tides are largely predictable for at least 100 years. Therefore, tidal stream energy has better potential to provide a sort of firm energy generation. Orkney has one of the strongest tidal currents in the world, which makes it a very suitable location for tidal energy developments. However, to lower the energy cost and maximize the benefit of tidal energy generation, the energy extraction method needs to be efficient technically and economically. The first step to achieve cost-effective tidal energy generation is to choose the right device for the right site. Generally speaking, most of the tidal energy developers, they choose the right site for their devices, but they don't design their devices for the distinctive characteristics of the specific deployment site. In this study, we selected 5 different tidal energy technologies and we assessed their performance at 2 different sites, Heriot-Watt and Pentlandfirth. As you can see from the tables in this slide, that each turbine performed differently at each of the 2 sites. Let's take the first site, for example, Heriot-Watt. We can see that the shuttle turbine, the 70 kilowatt turbine, has the best performance. It operated at 59% of its rated power and it achieved 42% capacity factor. But when we look to the Pentlandfirth site, we can see that this turbine is not the best choice for that site anymore. It's actually the Atlantis AR1500, which means that the performance of the turbines is strongly affected by the characteristics of the site. As we all know that the power is proportional to the velocity cubed. Therefore, generating at higher velocities produces much more power than at lower velocities. And this is why majority of the current tidal energy technologies in the market are designed to reach its rated power output at high flow speeds. So the device then can produce a higher amount of power, which improves the economic viability of the tidal energy development. But this means that the turbine will work for a short period only at its full rated power, which will result in a low capacity factor and oversized infrastructure to support the peak energy flow, which happens for a short period of the tidal cycle only. But does that apply on all cases? Let's take 2 example sites in Orkney, Heriot-Watt and Hoy Sound. The figures on the right show the occurrence histogram of different velocities during a full tidal cycle. Deploying a turbine that has a rated speed between 2.5 and 2.7 meter per second at full force would give an acceptable capacity factor. But deploying the same turbine at high sound would produce a very low capacity factor and a high variation in the energy generation. An energy extraction system like that is definitely not the most efficient or cost-effective system. To improve the system efficiency, we suggest to regulate the turbine's power capacity. In other words, limiting the rated power of the turbine. Lowering the rated power will increase the device capacity factor and will lower the size and cost of the turbine structure. Also, lowering the maximum energy flow will reduce the size and the cost of the cables and the associated infrastructure. All this cost saving would offset any loss due to the reduction in the total energy output. Here's an example where we apply the suggested strategy on a 70 kilowatt turbine at full force. We have limited the turbine's capacity to 60% of its original rated power output. This results in over 21% increase in the system capacity and around 19% only loss in the power generation. It's important to note that those figures are affected by the characteristics of each site and the specs of the turbine. Therefore, we are not presenting here the optimum limiting percentage. We are just giving an example on how applying this approach could improve the system efficiency. Let's take things one step further and couple the system with a storage option. In this example, we applied another regulating factor. We have the modified rated capacity in a way to allow a 20 kilowatt max power output to be released to the grid and store the remaining to be released at times when the generation is lower than 20 kilowatt. In this way, we will have a consistent power released to the grid of 20 kilowatt, as we can see in the figure here. Coupling regulating power output with an appropriate storage system gives the flexibility to produce a baseload supply or even a variable supply that matches the demand pattern. This strategy would reduce the strain on the network and cut the overall tidal energy cost. Thank you for listening.